Welcome. I'm Ronnie Boyer. I'm the Wellness Coordinator for Newark City Schools. Thank you for attending tonight's Your Child and Healthy Relationships webinar. We're so glad you're here. After the presentation, please stay on for the Q&A session. If you need to process any of the subjects discussed tonight, or you're looking for resources for yourself or your family, feel free to call the Ohio Health Sexual Assault Response Network of Central Ohio's helpline at 614-267-7020. We've also created a document with all the various school districts' contact information for you. To access it, just scan the QR code on your screen. Again, welcome to the seminar.
Well, we're so excited to be here with you all virtually tonight for our Boundaries 101 conversation, the first of this series. And this is presented by the Center for Family Safety and Healing. I work for the center. My name is Julie Sespico. I'm a training coordinator at the Center for Family Safety and Healing. And I'm here with my colleague, Margie.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Margie Carrington. I am also a trainer coordinator with the Center for Family Safety and Healing. We are really excited to have this amazing conversation with you guys tonight around boundaries.
So before we dive into all things boundary setting, we want to share a little bit about our center, just so you're aware of some of the resources that exist in the Central Ohio area. So we are located in Columbus. We also have a satellite office in Westerville, but we are partnered with Nationwide Children's Hospital. Our center is located right across the street down in the Columbus area, and we are part of a multidisciplinary team and effort that really supports victims of family violence, of all kinds of family violence. So we recognize that family violence doesn't happen to just a certain age group. It's really something that occurs across the lifespan. So we support victims of child abuse and teen dating violence and domestic violence and elder abuse. That's really the heart of our center, is supporting those victims. But Margie and I get to work for a part of the center that's really focused on preventing abuse and breaking the cycle of family violence. So we get really passionate about talking with young people. We go out and talk with middle schoolers and high schoolers all around the Central Ohio area to really promote healthy relationship behaviors and help young people set a vision for what they want in their friendships and romantic relationships, and to be able to better identify unhealthy and abusive behaviors. And a lot of that healthy boundary or healthy relationship setting starts with boundary setting and boundary work. So it's great to kick off tonight by talking about boundaries, which is really foundational. So before we jump in, I like to just take a moment to recognize that the word boundary, I think, gets thrown around a lot. It's one of those words that gets used so much that it almost starts to lose its meaning. So, I will say that when we go out and talk with different parent groups and different community groups, we hear a lot of adults who will say, oh, boundaries come so easily to me. It's so natural for me. I'm an expert at boundary setting. First of all, tell me your secrets, because I don't feel that way at all. Boundaries don't feel like something that comes naturally to me. It feels like something I have to practice and work toward. And so I think that is kind of a first key point to start with tonight, is to, even if you're that person who thinks like, oh no, boundaries are just natural to me, this is easy for me, take a moment to kind of start from a place of curiosity and being like a student learner kind of mindset. And that's really gonna, if we can approach our young people by saying, hey, you don't have to be either have boundary setting skills or you don't. It's skills that we build over time, and let's learn together and let's practice together. Margie and I are all about a power with approach. It feels more collaborative with our young people to approach it as, hey, we both have skills that we want to improve on, and this is a lifelong learning. So just taking a moment to step back, and even if you think, oh, I'm an expert at boundaries, this is my jam, just thinking for a moment and approaching with some curiosity and approaching as kind of that learner mindset, because that's where our young people are at. So I'm going to kick it over to Margie to really take us through some of the steps of how we talk about boundaries and teach boundary setting.
Thank you, Julie. You are correct. Boundaries are really, for some people, they can be uncomfortable, and for some people, they're not. It comes very natural and easy for them to set boundaries. But what we really want to look at today is really thinking about how can we begin to help our young people set boundaries for themselves. And so before we, really get into this conversation, we first really want to define what are boundaries. And so, boundaries are essentially about understanding and respecting our own needs and being respectful and understanding of the needs of others. And we also know that boundaries can help you define what you are comfortable with and really how you want to be treated. And so we really think about that. Boundaries is really about our own comfort level and what is okay for us. And the times where we are around people, or if we're in places where we kind of feel, ooh, I really don't like it here, we get that icky feeling in our gut that lets us know, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. We really need to be able to listen to those. And so really being able to start these conversations with our young people early and really starting them often, just starting to have conversations with our young people all the time, having them at the dinner table, just talking to your children. And so one of the things that we really look at is how do you talk to your kids about their gut feelings? How do we really start to help our young people identify their boundaries? And it really does start with helping them learn about their emotional vocabulary, so they're able to name their feelings and really identify what those feelings are, because we know for some of our young people, they don't really know the feeling, like that feeling word, to truly tell us this is how I'm feeling and that I don't like something. And so really cueing in into, okay, I'm noticing, even this body language, or helping them with learning what some of those words are. There's different tools out there like feeling wheels that really can enhance that emotional vocabulary that you can use with our children to begin teaching them about the feeling words. And so another thing that we really want to pay attention to is, as we are helping them identify and they're telling us how they're feeling around the boundaries, really listening. So we really want to reflect back the boundaries that they had just told us, and really hearing them. We really want them to know that their voice holds value, and they're seen. And so when we're able to reflect back on those boundaries that they have told us, really being that support person, we can ask things like, hey, so I hear you're saying that you really don't like it when she touches you on your shoulder, or how can I really help you feel safe and comfortable? Asking them what you can do to help them feel comfortable. And sometimes it's nothing, and that's okay too. But just listening and letting them know that you are there to really support them after they have identified what their feelings are around that comfort level. And so as we're talking about boundaries, and we define boundaries, and really identifying, helping our children identify what what those feelings are around their comfort levels, we really want to begin to empower children. So this is our second step that we're going to talk about. And this is empowering our children. And really, how do we do that, right? And so many parents we talk to are exploring boundary conversations about, their body with younger kids, and really helping them begin to name their private body parts is important. And so just really, when it comes to talking to our children, we really want to develop and talk about their boundaries and really all the areas in their life. So that can be, their privacy, and not, social media comes into play with that. Our cell phones come into play with that. That can be their romantic relationships. It can be their friendships, and really asking about what are some of these boundaries that you are really putting into place with your friends and with your partners. And so talking about healthy and unhealthy behaviors, because we know when you're in relationships, partners can cross boundaries, and setting clear expectations to your partner about what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with is so important. And another thing that comes up that we hear students talk about is their identity. And this is really for, if you want to be called by a certain pronoun and your partner or your friends are ignoring that boundary, helping your child identify and really empower them to, what do you do if someone calls you that after you told them to stop and they continue to cross that boundary? And this is a way that you can really help empower them, learn how to have those conversations with their friends in their life and the people in their life, really. And another thing, too, that we discuss with our young people is consent. And consent is so important. And having our young people understand what consent really is, and really helping them know that even though consent can change, and even though I'm giving you consent today, doesn't mean tomorrow I may not want you to do that. I may not like that. And so you do have the right to withdraw what that consent was, and really helping our young people understand that when they are in their relationships as well. And so what are some of these strategies? We're talking about how can we empower our young people, but what are some of the strategies you can also do? And really, it's about practicing. Right? How can we start having these conversations? What can we do to practice? And one of the things that we really recommend is what if scenarios. What if scenarios? What if you have a friend that called you a name that you didn't like? What would you do? And to take it a step further, what if you told your friend you didn't like it and they continue to call you that name? What would you do then? And this was a great time to ask, who would you go to for support? Who are the safe, healthy adults or people in your life that you feel as though you could talk to about this? And so this opens up this other conversation around who are the people that your child feels comfortable with, especially adults that they feel comfortable with talking about situations that they really don't know what to do or how to handle that situation. And so practice that can be done again at the dinner table, when you're driving to sports practice. It could be practiced, wherever, but really having those what if scenarios are just so important, and they're so helpful, because what we see is our children sometimes, they're not going to sometimes say, it's me, I'm the one that is going through this. They might say, oh, it's my friend and my friend at school, this happened to them, and what should I do about it? And so knowing that is why these what if scenarios are very helpful. We also want to help our children learn how to set very clear expectations, clear boundaries. And so instead of saying, stop it, we want to teach them, say what the behavior is, not just stop it. We want them to learn, say, stop pulling my hair. Stop calling me that name. I don't like it when you touch me on the back. Really explaining exactly what it is that you want them to stop doing. So that is setting very clear expectations to what your boundary is. Another thing that we see is how in relationships, how boundaries can kind of get mixed to being like a mask of control over others versus this is my personal boundary. So it can really be this way of, I don't want my partner talking to the opposite sex because, hey, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's a boundary that I'm setting. I don't like that. But really looking at this as, is this a boundary that you're setting, or is this a way that you are trying to control your partner? And so really discussing this, especially with your older teens, about healthy and unhealthy behaviors. You'll hear us talk about that a lot, because we know how important it is. We know how there are partners that try to use different things to try to control their partner in relationships. And so really being able to recognize when that unhealthy behavior is really happening in your relationship is so important. Just important to start having with our children that conversation. And so as we are talking about practicing boundaries and having these conversations with our children, at the same time, we also need to teach young people to respect others' boundaries as well, right? And this can get, especially with siblings, right? Teaching boundaries and helping them develop empathy skills is so important because, yes, we want them to be empowered, right? To really set their own boundaries. But we also want our young people to understand that if you cross someone else's boundaries, how would they feel? And so really helping them develop these empathy skills is something else that you can use when you're practicing the different scenarios. And if you can use many things. You can use media, you can use stories, you can use real life scenarios to really start helping your young person practice and really start to understand what empathy is, because this is something that is developed and you're learning. And so if I cross a boundary, it really helps me to know that you didn't like that, so I don't cross that again. While I'm telling you my boundary, I need to respect your boundary. So this is what we're creating. We're really creating this, we're going to respect each other's boundaries. We're going to understand that. And so I brought up siblings because I just think so much. I have my own children, and I think how they are always crossing each other's boundaries, and how, it's like a constant conversation that we have. But it is important that they notice what you are doing to the other person is making them sad, and they don't like that. So really calling it out and pointing, letting them know that, hey, you have to listen and you have to be respectful of their boundary, just like I want them to be respectful to you. So really, using different media, social media is a great one that you can use, especially with your middle schoolers and your high schoolers. We know TikTok, huge. You might watch TikTok yourself. But TikTok has so many videos, and there's a lot on there about boundary crossing. And one in particular that we show a lot of our students when we go out is called Kissing Your Best Friend. It was a challenge. And the Kissing Your Best Friend challenge was really You tried to kiss your best friend without them knowing it. And I'm sure you can see where I'm going. That in itself is a boundary cross, right? You're crossing that boundary. And consent, right? So consent comes into play. And so videos like that you can use to start this conversation. How do you think he felt? How do you think she felt after that happened to them? Do you think this is okay? What would you do if this happened to you? So we can always pull those what ifs right back into everyday, and everything we're doing, all the conversations that we have with our children. And go ahead, Julie.
So Margie, you really brought us all the way up to step 4. And I think from here, we have to recognize our role as the adults to model that healthy boundary behavior that Margie just lined out for us. So I think we can acknowledge that that's tricky sometimes. And I know for parents and caregivers that sometimes you just want to say, do what I say, not what I do, which is full empathy for that. But just taking a moment to consider the role, the ways that we inadvertently may be teaching boundary behaviors that we maybe don't want to pass on to our children. So kind of some of those unspoken ways that we exhibit boundary crossing. I think about, my own, my grandparents' level, they were at the level of not acknowledging, my grandma didn't speak up for her needs. She was the one who would wait to eat before the rest of the family ate. And I just think about that as such a, look how far we've come now. With my mom, she did so much boundary work, and for me too, I'm still practicing, but to say, hey, I have needs too. And, even when we come from those traditional backgrounds where it's like, no, we do get to assert our needs. And so you might be telling your kids like, hey, it's really important to stand up for your boundaries and you're allowed to have needs. But then they're watching you kind of always putting everyone else's needs ahead of you. Just a full empathy, but just a moment to kind of acknowledge that can speak really loudly to your young people. So I love this language that one of our favorite boundary experts, Dr. Becky at Good Inside, she offers us this idea of 2 things can be true at once. It sounds like a simple concept, but there's some nuance there that can be really helpful. So 2 things are true. I'm in charge of this decision, and my answer is no. You're in charge of your feelings, and you're allowed to be mad. And gosh, I can't remember ever hearing as a child that being mad or upset was okay. So there's that normalizing, that emotions are okay and they're neutral. It's what we do with them that makes them, positive or negative. But just honoring that your child is allowed to be upset about a boundary that you're setting for them, and just giving that language of, 2 things can be true. This is, I need this to happen, and you're allowed to be upset about that. And I just think about how powerful that is, and I think about how that can really set up young people who are, let's say, entering into a new relationship with a romantic partner, where that partner is trying to pressure or guilt trip them, like, oh, you're gonna hang out with your friends tonight? I thought you really cared about me and wanted to spend time with me. Well, I've always thought, you have to be kind. You have to not make anybody feel bad. But if we give our young people these blueprints to say, oh, 2 things can be true. I love spending time with you, and it's really important for me to spend time with my friends tonight. And you're allowed to be upset about that. I know that's disappointing to you, and that's valid. And I hate for you to be disappointed, and this is something that's important to me. I just think that this is a really powerful kind of blueprint to say, oh, clear is kind. It's not just always doing what everyone wants you to do. It's you can stand up for your own needs and still be kind and be clear about that. So the power of and is something that we really believe in as we're modeling these boundaries. So ways that we can show our young people that these 2 things can be true. Screen time is over, and I understand that ending your show is hard. If you've ever had a supervisor or someone say to you, I love the way you did this, but I'm going to need this, this, and this. right away when we hear that but word, it stops our brains from even hearing or believing that first compliment, right? It negates everything you said before the word but. So just a simple kind of switch is to start replacing those buts with and. So it's a way of honoring the young person's feelings, but still upholding your boundaries and expectations and needs. So, consider too how you can model those behaviors with the other adults that are around you. Like I said, you might be, preaching healthy boundary setting for your children, but then when it comes to your sister calls you and she's going, come on, we need to hang out this weekend. We need to do this activity. And you're like, I'm exhausted, but you're always kind of going, all right, well, if that's what the right thing is to do. I want to make my sister happy. I want to make my mom happy. We're communicating really loud and clear that our needs are secondary. So instead, using the power of and to say, hey sis, I need a quiet weekend with no plans, and I hear that you wish that tomorrow worked. Let's make a plan another weekend. Let's look at a date together. So just recognizing how we can really normalize in the culture of our little family setting or our friend setting, normalize honoring our own needs, and your children are going to see that message loud and clear as they're really shaping and building these skills that we want them to have too. And then this really brings us into our final step, which is adults, it's more on our shoulders, more responsibility that we have. But we really have this responsibility as safe adults to set and uphold boundaries that keep our children and teens safe. So I mentioned that at our center, the Center for Family Safety and Healing, we support young people who have experienced child sexual abuse and teenagers who've experienced sexual abuse. And one of the, a lot of the work that Margie and I do in community settings is talking to parents and people who work with youth, educators, faith communities, anyone who's working with youth to prevent child sexual abuse from happening and have better boundaries that can really put kind of a healthy barrier or boundary for our young people. I think one of the most common things we hear when we have those trainings is, okay, like I'm just going to put my kid in bubble wrap and never let them leave the house, which is a very understandable feeling, and I have full empathy for that too. But when we consider, most perpetrators of child sexual abuse or teen dating abuse and sexual abuse are known to the family and sometimes trusted by the family. In fact, 90% of perpetrators of child sexual abuse are known and trusted by the family. So when we consider that, instead of running and getting your bubble wrap and locking up the doors, instead we just consider how can we have healthy boundaries that we as the responsible adult can set around our family and around our children and teens, that we can communicate really clearly to the other adults that are interacting with our kids. So that means our family members, our extended family, our friends, our neighbors, our even our children's coaches and teachers and those other adults in their lives. So thinking about, what are some of those boundaries that we want in our household or around our children, and being really clear about those things. So it could be physical boundaries, like no forced hugging or kissing. That's something that I think, Margie, you were mentioning, like more and more parents are talking to their kids about bodily autonomy, and, that's so exciting to me. And then I also think more and more parents and caregivers are saying, hey, we are done with the days of having grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle like guilt trip kids into giving them a hug or a kiss as they're leaving. That's definitely how I grew up, like, oh, give grandma a kiss before she goes. But I think more and more parents are going, hey, wait, what message is that sending to my kids? So that consent conversation, I think, is really starting out. But it's important that we don't just tell the child, hey, you don't have to hug or kiss anyone that you don't want to. We have to say that to our adults. We have to say that to our family members, our friends. And that's where that awkwardness can come into play. Sometimes it can feel like a social risk in some ways, to say to a family member or someone we love and care about, hey, this is a boundary that we have. No, we don't do force hugging, but Sarah can give you a wave. Sarah, do you want to give Grandma a wave or a high five before she leaves? And sometimes that can feel awkward, but those healthy family members might have a moment of going, oh, that's weird. I'm not quite sure. Like I feel my feathers are a little ruffled, but healthy family members are going to understand and they're going to move forward and they're going to adjust to your boundaries. So you might also have other boundaries like, no swearing around the children or no inappropriate jokes around the kids, or, certain movies or shows are off limits when there are children or teens in the household. And then really clearly communicating those boundaries, like I said, to the adult. And like, what a message does that send to your child when you've told them, hey, your body belongs to you and nobody's allowed to touch it without your consent. And then grandma or grandpa goes in for that hug and your child looks at you with that like deer in headlights look and ooh, they do not want to be touched right now. And what message does that send to them where you go, stop, Mom, Dad, love you so much, but Sarah doesn't want to be hugged right now. Sarah, do you want to give her a high five or a wave, for example? And just what a message that's sending to that child saying, I am going to stick up for you. I am going to help support your boundaries and your bodily autonomy and your consent. I just think that those are really powerful ways we can stand up for our kids. And then this idea of having no expectation of privacy between your young people and the adults that they're interacting with. It sounds, it's a simple strategy, but it gets complex and there's some brainstorming you're going to have to do to kind of break down some of those scenarios. But, for example, maybe your child takes music lessons. I always went to Mrs. Haynes' house for piano. And when I was there, most of the time my mom, parent of 3 children, I'm sure she was like, ooh, 45 minutes to myself. I'm going to drop Julie off and head out. But there were also times where she would come halfway through the lesson and just sit and just listen. There were times where she would say, oh, I'm actually going to stay and hear what you're learning today. So she would kind of vary that and use these kind of strategies just like, random interruptions or making those situations observable so that there was never an expectation of I'm always going to have privacy with this child or this teenager. And it's not that, we have to suspect Mrs. Haynes of anything, but it's just this idea of putting up boundaries that the healthy adults in your life are going to uphold those boundaries. And it's a cue and a signal and a red flag if there's an adult that repeatedly violates those boundaries. That gives you some information that we need to pay closer attention to that individual. And I think those are where some of those awkward moments can really happen, where we're going, okay, I've already said, we don't do tickle fights at our house, and here's cousin coming over and always tickling the kids. I've told him 3 times, stop doing this, and they keep doing it. That gets uncomfortable, but we use this tool from Darkness to Light. Margie and I are both facilitators of this really great program. It's a national organization that gives us tools, like really tangible tools for protecting children. And this one I love this tool of, hey, if you see a boundary violation, you describe the behavior that you're seeing, you set the limit, and then you move on. It doesn't have to be this big confrontation. So it could look something like, all right, Uncle John, I can see where this joke is going and it's not appropriate around the kids. Let's drop it. Hey, did you watch this week's episode of our show? So simple, describe the behavior. Hey, inappropriate jokes, set the limit. We don't do that here. And then let's move on, right? It doesn't have to be this big, awkward confrontation. And so just giving ourselves those tangible, practical tools to go, all right, I could see myself doing this. And then consider for your young person, if you have a teen, this might be some helpful language to give them and a helpful kind of structure to give them to start practicing really clearly articulating their boundaries if it's developmentally appropriate for your young person. Just a helpful kind of framework. So I think we've given you some things to think about here and some hopefully some practical takeaways for having these conversations, or if you've already been having these conversations, how you continue, and new ideas around practicing those things. And we also just want to make sure we call out some of our resources that we really love. There's lots more to learn and read about when it comes to boundaries. Just check out some of these resources. Margie highlighted loveisrespect.org. Really great information, articles, quizzes, safety planning tools, for all geared toward teenagers and people who support teenagers, so those parents as well. So check out loveisrespect.org. I mentioned Darkness to Light, really great information there, especially around protecting and setting boundaries for those younger children. And then, of course, we're with the Center for Family Safety and Healing at Nationwide Children's Hospital. So we both have, those organizations have tons of information about boundaries and healthy relationships. So check those out. And I think I'm going to kick it over to Ronnie to close us out here and open our Q&A.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Julie and Margie, that was such valuable information about Boundaries 101. I really appreciated how much, all the different viewpoints that applied to, all the, the perspectives that you took into consideration. For me, myself, as a mother of teenage daughters, you can imagine, I learned so much. And for myself, as a sister and a daughter and, a friend, and there are, like you said, some of us that just have an easier time and they seem healthier, and then some people like me where we're always trying to please people. Yeah, and boundaries they're foreign to us. So wonderful guidelines, and then working within the school district. So many children I know that need to hear this, so I'm so grateful. And I'm wondering if we could just kind of explore a little more. And for those of you listening, we are so encouraging you to write in any question that you have. No question is wrong. We really, really want to open this up for discussion. And something that's been brought up, you two, is if you could help us to explore what are some helpful ways to discuss boundaries with siblings.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. So I think, I kind of touched a little bit earlier with the, I think we need to, when it comes to our siblings, we need to go right back to identifying how the feelings around that, what the boundaries are, recognizing and setting clear expectations and with the siblings. And also it goes into that empathy too. And it gets really tricky as a parent with your children are constantly fighting. But really going back to what we talked about is helping your child, the one that might, be having the boundary constantly gets crossed all the time. And it's happening over. I think, really having them talk to each other, and you are there to help that conversation. And that's the way, and it's really into developing that empathy that we were talking about. Really helping the other sibling understand that their brother or sister, they don't like it and it doesn't feel good. And they're sad, and using those feeling words as you're talking to the other sibling about their behavior. So he or she can recognize what they're doing as well and continue to have that conversation. And so the conversation can't stop. This is ongoing. You constantly are going to have to talk about boundaries. And, even importantly with family members, siblings is really hard. And crossing boundaries, when they're younger, and then as they get older, boundaries can get crossed a lot with siblings because they think they have a right, they can kind of cross those boundaries. Yep. And they can do what they want. But this is where it's so important that we really do empower our children, even with family. We want to hear your voice. we really want you to state what your boundary is and really set it clearly. You don't have to be nice. If someone keeps crossing your boundary, one of the things that, as parents, we want our children to be polite. We want them to be nice. We don't want them to be, looked at as being rude. But sometimes we need our children to be a little bit stern. Mm-hmm. And even with siblings,
I mean business voice.
Exactly.
Right.
The I mean business voice. Yeah. Even with siblings, we want them to stand up and say, stop it. I don't like that you keep throwing that toy at me, or I don't like it that you keep coming in my bedroom when I told you to stop coming in my bedroom. That's a big one at my house. So I think, just really teaching them, use your voice, but also letting them know, I'm here to support you too. You're not in this by yourself. I'm here to support you. I want you to, use your voice, and I want you to set these clear expectations. But I also want you to know I'm here, and I'm going to support you, and I will help you through this. And so that is always so important for our young people to know too. If it's their sibling, if it's their friend, if it's grandma, auntie, whoever, that I got support, and they're here for me, and I can go to them and talk to them about what's comfort and what's uncomfortable for me.
And if I could just add, I think
Absolutely,
something too, that when I think about sibling arguments and pushing each other's buttons and crossing all those boundaries, those are often really heated situations, right? They're very escalated. So I think when we what we know about how we react to stress and what our bodies and brains do when we're stressed out in those moments, and what our young kids are experiencing, is they're not going to be able to sit there and have those rational empathy conversations in the moment. So I just wanted to add a little note that it's okay if in the moment you're just kind of managing, like, all right, we're just going to separate, everybody go to their kind of calm corners and take time to kind of get regulated, and then come back and talk with each individual sibling about what are your needs, what are your boundaries, how did you feel, and then kind of get into that, how do you think your brother or sister felt? But we're not going to get anywhere if we try to do that when everybody's escalated, right? So I just wanted to throw that in. You're not a failure if you're trying to have those good empathy conversations in the moment, and it's not working. Take time to let everybody kind of calm and regulate before we can have those good talks.
Thank you, Julie. That is such a very important point. I appreciate that permission slip as a mother.
Yes.
Not have to navigate that in the moment. And thank you, Margie, for addressing that so thoroughly. Here's another interesting thing someone brought up, and I have a lot of, I would love to hear this answered as well. Any suggestions for encouraging self-respect versus pleasing others to gain approval? So
this is my this is a question I ask myself a lot. So that self-respect and versus trying to gain others' approval and seek others, make other people comfortable. That's what it really comes down to, and something that I'm, like I said, continuously learning is to, like Margie said, really sit with myself and recognize, like, oh, I do have some needs. It's okay for me to have needs that are different than my partner and my friends, even the people I love the most in the world. I'm going to have some different needs from, and that can definitely be a point of contention sometimes. There's conflict that can arise from that. Like, the closer we are to someone, the more we feel like we should be aligned on absolutely everything. But I think when it comes to just reinforcing that message as much as we can to our young people, that you're allowed to have needs that are different from other people's, and your needs matter. And if somebody, that people pleasing happens for me, it happens for other people. It's sometimes kind of a survival response in a way. But I think just, and knowing that we're not going to take that behavior away overnight, but I think reinforcing to your young person that when you're, if you're trying to people please, you're really taking away your own need. You're kind of turning your back on your own needs. And something that I heard if from a therapist, actually, that is really something important that I bring into my everyday life is even if you assert your need to the people around you and they don't like do what you expect them to do or want them to do, that still matters. For you to hear your own voice stand up for yourself, it's really important, and it creates this kind of positive feedback loop for yourself. So even starting there with that teen or that child to say, all right, just practice it at home by yourself, like saying what you need and saying what you want to happen, can help reinforce that skill. So when they are put in that people-pleasing pressure situation, that they've practiced using language and hearing themselves stand up for what they need and want.
Thank you, Julie. That is so helpful. And something that's coming to my mind that you talked about was the power of and. I really think that applies here too. Can you just do a quick review of that powerful statement?
Yeah.
In my mind, I thought, I'm going to remember that for myself, and I'm going to be sure to talk to my daughters and students at school about that.
I love that tool. It's a good one. So just considering that two things can be true, and your friend can be really bummed that you don't go to this, party with them, and that is okay that they have those feelings and feel disappointed, and you can stay true to what you need because you've identified your need is to stay in and have a quiet night and have your me time, which you have identified as important to you. So those two things can be true. I can have my needs met and stay at home, and my best friend, you're allowed to be disappointed about this, and let's look at another thing that we can do together at another time. I think that's definitely applies in that situation.
Yeah, I do too. I just feel like it's so powerful because, as you've been saying, and especially with this people pleasing, we're taught and we feel like we can't let people down.
Yeah.
You can't let people down. You can't make a decision that's going to make somebody angry.
Yeah.
But when I hear you say that, the power of and, you can be disappointed.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
I think we avoid that
Right.
so often, but it's if you're standing in what you need, and you're not exerting power over the other person. I think that is kind. We say clear is kind.
Clear is kind.
Clear is
That's
kind.
Brene Brown.
That's Brene Brown right
That's
there.
my girl.
And-
Yeah.
And I'll just kind of piggyback off of that. The power of and is so powerful when you use it because it takes the guilt away.
Yeah.
And that is a feeling, especially for a parent, if you're trying to set boundaries with your child, especially maybe like a toddler or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old,
Right.
it could take that feeling of feeling guilty about setting that boundary. And so it lets you really have this, it's okay for you to put your need first, and you're allowing them to feel the way they want to feel, and that's okay. And hearing that we're okay sometimes is so important, even for the young person that wants to people please. And we know for young people, being a teenager, belonging, fitting in, that is so important, to belong to a group, your peers. That's, that is our, you think about your high school years, right? Really trying to just see who you are. You're learning your identity, you're learning so much about your world, and it's tough. And so even with our young people, letting them know it's okay, and taking that shame away when we use that, and you have the authority to set a need. Also with boundaries, it is a lot around self-care. We need boundaries for ourselves.
Yes, that's
And
so true.
if we don't really have these boundaries, and if we're not, really building a skill, and boundary setting is an ongoing, I say it's a lifelong learning. We have to continue to learn this. And it may not be for everyone else, but for myself, it's constant. At work, you know, it goes into our work lives, that work-home life balance. And, you know, we've been hearing so much about self-care, especially since the pandemic, you know. It's really been called out. And so really putting in these boundaries are so important. And it lets us put our needs first. And so as an adult, you know, it's so important that we are starting to put our needs first too. And letting our children know it's okay for you to do the same thing. You know, you're important. It's okay for you not to feel comfortable with someone giving you a hug, or, you know, you being alone in a room with a coach or something, because we know that can happen too. You know, everyone has their different comfort levels, and we need to let our children know it's okay. Your feelings matter. Yeah. And Julie, as you were saying, you know, a long time ago, children are to be seen and not really heard. And, you know, oh, you're okay.
Lose that attitude.
Lose your attitude.
Don't be angry. Don't
get over there and, you know, you kiss your family member or give them a hug, you know. But if we truly think about it, was it really, you know, what our children, what we really wanted, or was it really that people pleasing? We don't want people to be upset with us, so we're kind of like forcing it. And so really taking a step back and really, you know, diving deep really about boundaries and really setting those limits for ourselves and for our family is so important to put your needs first.
Thank you, Margie. I appreciate you both so much and all the insight that you're sharing with us. Here's another question. I just find this to be very moving. What if both parents had zero positive role modeling of healthy boundaries in our childhoods? Yeah, and then if that's the case, which we know is true for so many of us, how do we learn more Boundaries 101 info so we can be sure we teach our child and model good boundaries? Well, isn't that something? I just want to say to this parent, I just want to hug you. We're with you. And I love just being here and asking these questions and asking that question. Isn't that just such a wonderful place that you're at right now? Give yourself a little credit, okay?
Truly.
Truly.
Yeah.
Just knowing.
Go ahead.
Just to honor, just to acknowledge, like, oh, I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And I need to develop a blueprint. Like, I just feel like that's half the battle.
Exactly. Me too. Great job.
So I have a couple of thoughts, but Margie, did you want to share yours?
I'll just share two thoughts. And first, you're recognizing it. You know, I think that's like the step one is to recognize that, hey, this is something that I really didn't have any modeling growing up. I'm learning. Like, I am learning how to do this. Give yourself grace. That is so important. Give yourself grace, right? This is a learning process, especially if you are developing boundary setting. It's a skill. It really is a skill. And give yourself grace as you are on this journey. And it's okay if you fall back. It's okay. But the most important thing is keep on, you know, doing everything you can to learn about boundaries, learning how to set boundaries, because it's a skill and it's a learn. You learn this as you go, right? You learn how to be more stern and really use your voice and set those boundaries. And so continue to do that, you know, and boundary setting is not easy. It is just not easy. Like I said, some people it is, but for most people, it is not easy always to set boundaries. And it really isn't with your family members and your close friends. Those are the hardest people to set boundaries with. And so just, you know, continue whatever, you know, I'm just, thank you for just calling it out and recognizing it. That is just amazing. I know Julie wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just think, first of all, that was the right place to start, just validating that it is hard and you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think that there's some really good resources that are shared, that were shared in this slide, and also that I think if you use the QR code and get a list of resources there's some good resources. I will say a couple things that are coming to mind. You know, for our younger children, you know, if you have younger children in the home, I think one of the things that comes to mind is positive parenting support groups. So I know Nationwide Children's has a program called Triple P that you can find more information about if you look at nationwidechildrens.org. You can also find some good articles and things about boundary setting at the Center for Family Safety and Healing.org. And then I think for those teen population, I think starting with loveisrespect.org is an awesome place to not only, you're learning for your young person, but you're learning for yourself too. So I think just walking alongside our young people is actually a really good way to do this. That you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to learn everything there is to know about boundaries and then teach my young person. I think it's so much more valuable to say to your young person, hey, this is something that I'm practicing. What do you think about this? Do you ever struggle with this? I notice that I sometimes struggle with people pleasing. Have you ever had that feeling before? And just that power with approach for our young people is actually so much more effective in building those skills than to say, okay, I know everything about this and I'm going to tell you everything now. I love the opportunity, actually, you're set up for success to kind of walk alongside together and learn as you're learning too. I also think I just want to throw out support for support groups for parents. Find other parenting groups around you, or seek out parents who are on a similar journey of boundary setting. Talk to your school counselor and find out, are there parent support groups that are available. Looking at even there's some really great books and resources, and getting even professional support like counseling can, even for something that's just like I have parenting questions, is a great reason to talk to a counselor too. So there's lots of support out there. You're not alone.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. That is so wonderful and validating, I know, as a parent, and so many important things that you pointed out. Even any of us as learners, when we're learning alongside someone, and I love your phrase, power with. I've always heard of power over and power under. Power with is so very important to remember. Nobody likes to listen to an expert anyway, especially if the expert's your mother, right? So
it's very true. Very true.
So let's learn together. Well, I just can't thank you both enough. We're just thrilled, all the school districts that have joined together with you to try to reach our parents, and we're so appreciative. Thank you so much. And we just thank all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you for attending tonight's seminar. And remember, we have more coming up, so we hope to see you again in the future. Again, I'm Ronnie Boyer, the Wellness Coordinator for Newark City Schools. I want to remind you that if you need support or resources for yourself or your child, please don't hesitate to reach out to SARMCO's 24-hour helpline. Again, it's at 614-267-7020. We've also created a document with all of the various school districts' contact information for you. In order to access it, all you need to do is scan the QR code that's on your screen. Finally, we hope that you found value, knowledge, and inspiration in this session. We've placed a short survey link in the chat. We'd love to get your feedback. You matter, your voice matters, and we want to know your thoughts. So thanks again. We hope to see you soon, and enjoy the rest of your evening.